Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining our Apporto webinar today. Today, we'll be showing you our dynamic virtualization environment, which is perfect for your cybersecurity programs. First of all, just quick introductions. I'm Phil Morgan. I'm Managing Director for Apporto here in the UK. I've been working in higher ed, in EdTech, almost 20 years now, with various different technologies. Actually started my career at Lancaster University, worked in a couple of different faculties there and looked after Windows desktop deployment across all the labs, AV technology and all those kinds of things. So we're doing this quite a long time, but relatively new to Apporto and very excited to be here. And I think hopefully you'll find it interesting to see what we've got to show you today. A little bit later, Phil Spitzy, our solutions architect, will be taking you through a demo. Phil has a very similar background to me. So Phil, I'll pass to you for a quick introduction.
Hi, everybody. Thank you as well for joining. Yeah, Phil and I are long lost brothers almost. We have similar backgrounds in IT. I also worked here in the States at a couple of universities, and we found ourselves together at another ed tech company in the UK not too long ago. And now we're back together here at Apporto and excited to show you what we've got.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil. And last but certainly not least, we're also joined by Anthony Wader, CEO and founder of Apporto. So first of all, I'm going to hand over to Anthony just to introduce you to Apporto and to talk a little bit about the background to the company.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for that great introduction. I'm Anthony. I'm the CEO, founder of Apporto, and I've been at this now for 7 years. And I must say that the higher ed space has been a very interesting and rewarding space. We got our start in 2014 in the heart of Silicon Valley in Palo Alto, California. When we started talking to universities here in California. So we talked to UCLA, we talked to Stanford and those universities, and they told us about how challenging it was for their students to access the computer labs. For instance, at UCLA, which happens to be in downtown Los Angeles, some students very often would have to drive for an hour, they would spend 20 minutes finding a parking spot, go to the lab, work on whatever SPSS or MySQL or whatever the technology they needed, and then again spend an hour getting out back to their home. And so obviously that did not make a lot of sense. So our initial goal was to enable universities to provide access to software in their computer labs anytime, anywhere. And we must have been lucky or smart, depending on how you look at it, because now we have more than 200 higher ed customers, mainly in North America, but now thanks to you, Phil, we have several customers in the UK as well, and we're looking at Europe as well. Similarly, in the last couple of years, we've been talking to our customers about some of the challenges they have, and they brought up the topic of how to enable students to undertake to work on cybersecurity assignments, or maybe MIS assignments. And that presented a different challenge. Not only the students needed access to those anytime, anywhere, but even in a computer lab environment, in a traditional computer lab environment, IT may not be receptive to the idea of allowing students to install malware, or allowing the faculty to install perhaps an AD, an Active Directory that may conflict with the existing AD that was set up by IT. So all of those challenges led to our customers telling us in very strong terms that they would like us to deliver a next generation cybersecurity solution in our virtual computer lab. Next slide, please. And the other side of all of this is that there is, in the United States and elsewhere, an enormous demand for cybersecurity jobs. I'm sure you folks are seeing that in the UK, but here in California, where we're based at, the governor, Gavin Newsom, has earmarked $100 million in grants to universities who would undertake cybersecurity programs, whether they're giving certificates whether they are, creating new degrees or just giving courses. So there's a huge demand, there's a huge gap between the pool of cybersecurity experts and the demand for cybersecurity experts. So that's the other side of all of this. There's a huge demand, and we're seeing that obviously in North America and everywhere else. On to you, Phil.
Thank you, Anthony. And yeah, it's absolutely the same in the UK. So, just in the last 12 months, 5,300 jobs were created in the cybersecurity sector. Over 10.5 billion of revenues now, and that was according to a GovUK study published last month. And actually, analysts are predicting over 10% year-on-year growth in the UK, which already has the largest cybersecurity sector in Europe. So it's not surprising that more and more higher education institutions are developing cybersecurity courses, and university enrollments, as I'm sure people on the webinar today will know, are increasing rapidly in this area. And you're probably also aware, the government in the UK have a national cyber strategy covering 2022 to 2025. And that includes awarding universities the status of academic centres of excellence in cybersecurity research and cybersecurity education, along with a certification of cybersecurity bachelor's and master's degrees, and the creation of a cybersecurity apprenticeship. And all of those things obviously are intended to increase the flow of cybersecurity graduates into the workforce. So no doubt you're here today because you're either already delivering cybersecurity and computer science programs which are growing, or you may be thinking of introducing new degree schemes, and hopefully we'll be able to help. So from our experience across North America, we appreciate delivering cybersecurity programs is a real challenge, and there's a number of inherent risks in this area. Students often need to have hands-on experience with exactly the kinds of keyloggers, malware, viruses, that the university want to prevent from traversing the university network. And so many of the ethical hacking tools and software titles that CS students need to use are going to be blocked. And in order to support hands-on learning, students and academics, need the freedom to be able to configure, their own networks and systems, with root access. But of course, at the same time as encouraging the growth of cybersecurity teaching in the UK, the government also introduced requirements for universities to meet Cyber Essentials certification. And that means adopting security best practices across the campus network, keeping all the software patched, restricting administrative access. And so, therein lies the problem. Consolidating those requirements might mean that there's then a disconnect between your needs in academic departments and central IT provision. So, we're seeing more and more universities looking to move cyber labs off their network. We've also seen many universities, try to create bespoke cyber labs themselves, but that obviously takes time. The physical equipment to do that is very costly. And creating a bespoke online environment also requires a lot of academic time as well, and time to maintain, particularly if students, break the virtual machine that they're using and that needs resetting. And so those kinds of challenges, can eat into teaching time as well. And also what we're hearing, and certainly in conversations I've had in the past few weeks, is that because of this rapidly increasing enrollment, academics are then having to double teach courses, in order to cover the number of new students, because the physical labs can't scale fast enough. And so we hope that these are areas and all challenges that we can help you with at Apporto. I think there's also a background of growing demand for students for digital equity and 24/7 services, perhaps spurred on from COVID. And nowadays we need to ensure that all students are empowered to learn and not disadvantaged if they don't have the laptop or PC capable of virtualization to do these kinds of studies. There's also a continued trend towards hybrid learning. And I think, post-COVID, there's been an even greater drive to rethink learning spaces, to move from, traditional labs to more flexible open learning. And there's continued pressures on existing lab space. So many universities, have a growth in distance learning. And, one of the things that we really place an emphasis or importance on at Apporto is to guarantee that all students get exactly the same access to our cyber labs and the same experience regardless of the device that they're connecting from. Um, I did talk a little bit about cyber essentials already, but I think the other challenge that university IT are seeing is the growth in cybersecurity and IT jobs has actually drawn many people away from universities and into the private sector. And so currently the number one problem that IT departments across UK universities are facing is around human resources. Lots of vacant posts and staff turnover. And, that can be challenging as well, because if there's a lack of resource, a lack of time, then it's difficult for IT to address these kinds of specialist use cases, within the academic departments and to deliver new services for students. And I think things like desktop as a service, software as a service are an obvious choice to fulfill those kinds of educational needs and also reduce the burden on university IT. It also means that in academic departments, and in particular when it comes to cyber labs, you get the flexibility that you need without the usual barriers that you might have when trying to do these things internally. Okay. So how can we help? Well, at Apporto, we provide virtual computer labs. That includes Windows, Linux, and Mac desktops in the browser. But today we're here to tell you about our cyber labs. And this is a dedicated Linux-based environment. It's completely isolated from your network. And we provide persistent virtual machines, so one for each student, which support nested virtualization. And what that allows is for students to build their own networks, their own servers, clients, and with a range of virtualized hardware, and perform all the different kinds of labs and coursework that are required of them, for your cybersecurity and computer science courses. Also, to help you get started with our platform, we do provide some ready-made templates and content. We've got that for things like the CompTIA Network Plus certification and Security Plus certifications. And we're actually building out more content at the moment to help people get started in this environment. And that allows you to see what's possible in our Cyber Labs environment. And then, of course, you can build out your own templates for teaching and design those as well. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to hand over to Phil just to talk a little bit about the features that we have in Apporto, and then we'll go into a demo and show you what this looks like.
Perfect. Thank you, Phil. Yeah, so coming from the history of starting in the cloud, we've put a very strong focus on making everything browser accessible. Other solutions may require clients, may require VPN connections, and that creates a barrier to entry for students. It also puts an extra load on IT to support the students with those installations and configurations. So we've really made a focus on browser access. With that focus comes a very optimized delivery protocol, and that just requires a very light bandwidth connection. So even as students find themselves in a more remote area, they're still going to be able to connect and have a great experience. For the academics, we support all of the major VLE platforms. This allows for the embedding of Apporto resources directly into a course. It also means we've enabled automated provisioning to those resources by reading the class rosters from each course. So as students join or leave a class, through the automatic integration, they will then gain or lose access to the resources that go along with that class. It lightens the load considerably on the IT staff. We're going to show you a very awesome synchronous learning platform called Virtual Classroom. You'll really like how this can pull together on-campus and remote students together into a single platform and where they can learn together. We also will surface to you some learning analytics, the ability to look at some data points and help identify any potential problems that students may be having from the technology perspective. For IT folks in the audience, as Phil mentioned earlier, the Cyber Lab platform is isolated from the campus network. We run all of the full protection mechanisms in the background as part of our service, and it is a fully managed service. So there's can be very light lift from the IT or academic side, but we are here to help. And we do enjoy working with our customers to help build out the exact platform and scenarios that they want to use. In terms of the budget holders, we are offering a very low fixed cost subscription model, and that can be either based on an annual term if these classes run every term, or if it's a once a year term, we can do a 3 or 4 month term for the Cyber Labs platform as well. Perfect. Let us jump into a demo. Thank you, Phil.
Phil, there are people asking questions, and I want to encourage people to ask questions in the chat. And Phil Morgan, if you could either answer them, live at the right time, or maybe answer them in the chat. But feel free to ask away. Thank you.
Yep. So good question around the cost. Is it based on the number of students or users? And the answer is yes. For this platform, it is a named user license because every student is given a dedicated VM to work inside the environment. Okay, let me share my screen. Let me know when that's coming through, folks.
Okay, we got it, Phil.
Okay, perfect. So gaining access to the Cyber Labs occurs in one of two ways. Students can come in through single sign-on and they will land at this page. Or as I mentioned earlier, you can take the modular Cyber Lab and embed it directly into the VLE course. A single click of the launch button will grant them access to the environment and will sign them in directly to the desktop without additional credentials. So what I've logged into is my own personal VM that's been assigned to me. It is running Ubuntu, and it is actually going to serve as a host. Because when I launch the modular CyberLab console, I'm now able to interact with additional virtual machines. So this is what Phil just mentioned about us using nested virtualization. Another great benefit is that this system is template driven, which means you can use one of our pre-configured templates, like the one I'll open here, or you can build your own and distribute those to students so that every student has the same starting point for their assignments and for their exercises. So this is a Network Plus certification style template. We've got some endpoints on the right-hand side, routers and switches in the middle, some servers over here on the left-hand side. All of these devices can be booted. They can be logged into by the student as admin or root, and that enables them to get that hands-on experience that they're going to need before entering the workforce. So this is really, really critical. In terms of the flexibility, literally the sky is the limit. We can add nearly any image that you need for any scenario that you want to present. And making changes through the environment is all drag and drop, point and click. So as an example, if I'm more focused on a Windows class and I want to discard this Kali Linux server, I can simply delete it, come into the device library here on the left-hand side, find a Windows server object, drag that across, and then to put this online, I simply connect it with a network cable to our switch. So with just a few clicks in about 10 seconds time, I now have a Windows server that's been added to this environment. Again, I can boot this, log in with admin rights, configure the firewall. If it's an uninstalled server and that's part of the exercise, I can go through a full Windows installation. And again, it's all about the hands-on learning for the student, flexibility for the academics to be able to present the environments and build the environments that they want to teach with. We offer 2 starting templates today, and that we are going to grow that in the next several weeks. So we've got this Network Plus style. We also have a Security Plus style template where we introduce a pfSense firewall. And now we can start learning some attack and defense scenarios and firewall rule configuration. However, it doesn't stop with just the templates. We have also included the lab exercises. So we have, for both of these templates, Network Plus and Security Plus, an entire list of student guides. So they can go through and conduct specific exercises, be able to complete those assignments. And this really offers a nice jumping off point for your academics and your teams to get started. Some of these you may want to use, some of them you may want to edit and change, completely fine, all available for you to do so. A couple other of fun features that we offer. So there is a full screen option. This is quite useful if students are coming in on in this case, a non-Linux device, and they want that immersive experience. So they can put the system into full screen. It will look like they're simply sitting at a network management console, as we see here. They also have the ability to enter into multi-monitor mode, and we support up to 3 screens. So this lets them spread out. Maybe they put the lab guide on one screen, they can put the environment on the other screen, and then still have a third screen where they can do some Google queries to help answer questions if they need that. So really nice environment from a productivity standpoint. What's really fun, and where we get into some more of the academic and the teaching side, is we've got a scenario built here where, as a faculty, I can actually broadcast my screen. So in this scenario, I've got some notes that I want to share with my class, with my students, get them started on the assignment for the day, and I can simply broadcast that. This broadcast option can include the microphone as well. So if I want to give verbal instructions to students, I can do that. And back on the student side, I'll get a prompt indicating that my academic has offered their screen sharing with me. Now, as you can see, I've got 2 choices. I can put it into a new tab. Perfect if I've got multiple screens. I can shift that across. But if I'm only working on a device with one screen, then I can go enter into kind of a picture-in-picture style mode. So I can connect here and keep a track of what the assignment is, move this up to the corner, and go about working through my lab assignment as I need to. So instructions are open up Cyber Labs, open up the template and follow the instructions. So I can simply come in and do that. Here's the template for today lesson. It's a very basic home network. I've got my PCs in the home, and I've got my router access here for the internet. Along with this, I'll need to open up the guide that goes with this, which I can do. And now I've got the instructions and learning about, in this lesson, how we're going to log in and configure a router. So again, all of this information is actually, in all of these devices rather, can be booted and made live. So we'll go ahead and start the router up here. And again, we can monitor the console and see that it boots properly. And once that's up and running, we can then boot one of the PCs and conduct the various exercises that go with this particular lab. So we'll start the Office PC here, and then we'll be able to log into that and go through the exercises. So today's assignment is about configuring this router, and what we need to do is first get the subnet we're on, find out what the IP address is of the router, etc. And then we'll be off to the races. Back on the academic side, I've got another option available to me besides broadcasting, and it's the reverse. I can open up our virtual classroom environment, and this lets me keep an eye on all of my students' desktops and monitor the progress as they go through the assignment. So this is really powerful, again, for hybrid learning, distance learning, high flex learning, pulling together students who may be in different classrooms, may be on campus and off campus at the same time, and be able to keep an eye on their progress and watch how they progress through the assignment. Back over here, as a student, this actually happens to be a joint assignment. So I'm going to use another one of our collaboration features, and I'm going to create a screen sharing link. And I have three choices. I can make it view only. I can make it a view and annotate or full control. Because we're working together, Phil Morgan and I will do a full control link. I'm going to copy that, and I will just share that with him via the chat. He will then be able to connect and work on this desktop alongside me, and we can go through this guide together as a team. So another trend that we're seeing in the market, I'm hands off and Phil's off to the races here. One of the trends that we are seeing is social learning. So the more group assignments, more team assignments, working in pairs on lab assignments, and Phil can go through and get into the router, and now we can start the configuration assignment here. What's nice is that through the virtual classroom feature, if we get stuck, we have the option to raise our hand, which we can do right from the toolbar. So I'll go ahead and do that. And that just signals to our instructor that we need some help. It highlights our thumbnail to that academic. They can zoom in, get a closer look, and then they can make it an interactive session through our built-in messenger. So they can have an interactive chat or a voice call with the student and be able to understand better where they need some help. If the student requests hands-on assistance, they can request remote control right from here. Maybe they can type in a couple of commands or potentially, correct a typo that they have noticed. And then once that student is moving forward again, simply go back to watching the entire class. And again, this screen will fill up with a thumbnail for each student's desktop. So really, really powerful option here for being able to conduct a class and lead a class and monitor a class as they go through an assignment. One of the nice things within the CyberLab environment, this is obviously a Linux-based machine. We do support Windows as well, as you've noted, so we can pull in a Windows 10 desktop. But alternatively, Apporto offers a full virtual lab environment that can be Windows-based or even Mac-based. So what we are able to do is give you that additional service as well. Maybe you're doing a programming class, maybe you're teaching something that is utilizing the Windows-based software. You don't necessarily need to run those Windows devices inside of the CyberLab. We can just give students direct access to a virtual computer lab machine. So I've logged in already to a desktop here. I've got Python installed. I can pull up my IDE, and I can even go ahead and load a file and get started with a Windows-based assignment. In this case, we're going to learn about programming a snake game. Always fun for the students. And once I've understood the logic, I've understood the programming, I've made whatever adjustments I want, I can simply just run that and see how it is working. Again, everything that we've shown is all browser-based, so students can come in regardless of device type and be able to access the system, have the access to the CyberLabs, access to a Windows environment if that's what's needed, and be able to conduct their learning as they go. And they don't need those specific devices that may be required. So I'm going to continue on here, hand it back over to Phil, and have another try at a high score.
Excellent. Thank you, Phil. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a good overview of what we can do within our CyberLabs environment. We do invite further questions. If you have them, we'll have some dedicated time for questions in just a few minutes. But let me just wrap up with a couple more slides for you all. Can you guys see that again? Okay, perfect. In fact, first of all, because you do this so well, Phil, I'm maybe going to ask you if you could talk a little bit about how we deliver this service. That would be good.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. Yep. So again, we're a fully managed service. And everything below the orange line here is what we're doing automatically for all of our customers. If ever you try to build out an environment on the cloud yourself, you'll know that there are a lot of moving parts. It's very, very complex. And that's where we come in, because we've done this hundreds of times. We've gotten over 2 million running desktops already, and we've understood how to handle cost optimization, how to put in place backups, monitoring, the protection that you need for intrusions, for antivirus, anti-malware, et cetera. We provide 24/7 support to all of our customers, and we're able to handle all of that within the fixed costs that we've already spoken about. Above the orange line, we'll give you access. We'll give faculty, academics, IT access to a simplified admin console. They can do some self-management tasks if they would like to, but we're always available to provide support. So I think it's unique where we don't lock people out, right? And give them that flexibility and that access to do some of that self-management if they desire to. Again, if they're out of time for the day, if they need something handled because there's a holiday or because there's a more critical project at play, hand it back to us. We're happy to jump in. And again, there's no extra cost. At the very top level, everybody's gaining access to a really great cloud desktop solution right in their browser, and again, from any device.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil. I'm just going to inject that we had a good question from Leo here in the chat, which I think is probably good to answer just now. So that was about VLE integration. In the UK, most universities use Moodle, Blackboard, and Canvas, and particularly interested in Moodle. So yeah, essentially we integrate with all of those VLEs, all the major VLEs, and what that allows you to do is to embed that link, that Apporto resource directly in the module in Moodle or Canvas or Blackboard or the VLE that you use. And so students who are used to going into the VLE to get access to their course notes and their assignments and so on, they get one-click access through to the Cyber Labs environment. And the nice thing about that is that we read the course roster, and also we can read the tutors that are assigned to that module as well, so that we can automatically set up the correct access in Apporto. So when the students click through, they get the correct Cyber Labs desktop, or if you were doing a Windows-based programming course, they get the correct Windows desktop with the software ready installed and ready to use. But also the tutors on that course automatically get access to the virtual classroom, to the presenter mode, to those features as well. So that integration makes it very, very simple for students and academics to get started and then make use of the system. We also have two-way integration with some of the VLEs, whereby students can actually submit assignments back to the VLE from their Apporto desktop and do that directly, which is really nice. So they don't have to move the files around, transfer them. They can just select the file within the desktop and submit it, which is really nice.
If I may add one more item. Yeah. So one feature we're adding in this summer release that's coming up in about a month is the ability for the student to do what we call asynchronous collaboration. So in many of the assignments that we're looking at here in a Cyber Lab, when the student completes an assignment, there may be no one file to upload. It may be more about the fact, or if the student is stuck and they need help, what they can do is they can take a link, a sharing link from their virtual desktop, and send an email to their faculty or drop it in the VLE. And using that link, the faculty can open the Cyber Lab of the student, and if the student is stuck, help them along. Or if the assignment is complete, this faculty can view the student's assignment in the Cyber Lab, grade it, comment on it, do whatever they need to do. Back to you.
Thanks, Anthony. All right. So just to sum up some of the key benefits of what we provide. So this is true digital equity. All you need to access Apporto is a browser with HTML5 support. So, a key thing here is that all the students get the same experience. It's not different if the student has Windows or Mac or even a Chromebook. As long as they've got a device with a browser, they can access this environment and they can use it in the same way as all of the other students. And as we also deliver, as well as CyberLabs, we can deliver Windows, Mac, and Linux desktops in the browser. So if you have other use cases, where you just want to deliver a Windows software, or you even want to deliver a Mac desktop, maybe you're doing courses where students are building Mac applications, we can also provide that as well. And as you've seen, we do provide all the tools needed for collaborative learning, and that does allow you to rethink labs and provide potentially on campus more flexible teaching spaces. It makes it easier to be able to teach these kinds of courses really in any lab or any space on campus, either just using regular desktop PCs or students bring their own device. It's a consistent experience. We are a true desktop as a service. So what that means is we can deploy very, very quickly. Typically 1 to 2 weeks is the normal setup time when we onboard a new customer. And as Phil was talking about earlier, we do work as an extension of the IT team there. So we'll save you a lot of time, not just in the kind of architecture of the cloud, managing the VDI stack and everything that goes with that, which we take care of for you. But we can also assist with the installation and updating of software in the desktops. And actually, we provide 24/7, 365 service. We have a 48-hour SLA. So if you need software installing into the desktop, you can just request it from our Apporto team, and we'll do that for you. We'll take care of it. Typically, my experience in the UK is when we make a request, in the afternoon, it's going to be there for 9 o'clock the next morning. So it's very easy to get updates done. You don't need to take up your own time or rely necessarily on internal IT to do those simple updates for you. We'll take care of that. We can also help you build out the environment if you've got specific requirements and you need help. We provide training, we provide support, it's all included. And I think that's also a really important part of the service that we offer, is that it is a low fixed subscription cost. So we don't charge any kind of overages. It's not monthly based on consumption like some of the other services that people are trying for this kind of education. It is fixed, so it's easy to budget, and everything is included. So all of the training and support and setup is all included in that. We won't turn away questions from students even. So, if a student has a problem and they use the help link in Apporto, we will help students, we'll help academics, we'll help IT teams. So, whoever uses the service and needs our support, it is provided. We do typically find that if you're comparing the Apporto solution to physical lab spaces, where you would obviously be providing PCs capable of virtualization, maybe physical switches and routers, all of that kind of hardware that you need to set up a cyber lab, then typical saving is going to be over 40% versus creating a physical space. So certainly if you're increasing enrollments, you're delivering new courses, this is a good solution to look at, because you're going to save money versus putting those physical lab spaces, and obviously the ongoing maintenance that's involved in those as well. And what many of our university customers have done is extend the lifespan of existing devices. So you may have some lab PCs that might still be serviceable. They might be a bit long in the tooth, but all they need is a browser and they can access Apporto. So rather than replacing physical PCs, it may be possible to reallocate that budget in order to have Apporto Cyber Labs and still just make use of those older PCs as web browsers. Okay, so I do see we've got quite a few questions in the chat, so we'll try to answer those now. And if you want to add any further questions, please feel free to do so.
So I'll take the first one if that's okay with you.
Thank you, Anthony.
So the privacy measures are obviously very important, and obviously GDPR obviously is on our mind, but here in the United States, and particularly in California, in fact instituted a new set of laws that are modeled after GDPR, so we had to comply with those. Furthermore, since the 1970s in the United States, there is a law around students' privacy of their data called FERPA, and we had to comply with those. So the short answer to this question is that yes, we do comply with privacy laws with GDPR. The next question is, can we run Android Studio on those machines? And the answer is absolutely yes. We have delivered Android Studio to many, many customers, and there should be no problem with that. The next question is, do you integrate with AULA? And it's a VLE I honestly had not come across before into AULA VLE. But I did a quick Google search, and apparently AULA has an LTI API. All the VLEs got together and they created a standard API called LTI. And AULA apparently supports that standard. So if we needed to integrate with that VLE, it would be a minor effort because they comply with the LTI. Do you offer SSO against accounts Azure AD? Yes, of course. Many of our customers use SSO to authenticate and authorize their users, and Azure AD is a very commonly used point of authentication and authorization for their environment. The next question is, can users save the current state of their VM? And the answer is absolutely yes. We are offering in this particular environment persistent VMs, which means that the student can log in, they can install software if they need to modify the registry, whatever changes they need to do. And when they leave and log back in, the state of the VM will be the same as they left it before logging out. So even though we may shut down the machine to save money, we persist the changes to the operating system. The next question is, it's a full-scale Kali Linux. It's not just a snapshot. It can be run in a container, or it can be run as a full virtual machine. Since we support nested virtualization, you can install a full Kali Linux inside of that virtual desktop. Is there a budget calculation tool? It's a very simple pricing, to be candid. I encourage you to reach out to Phil Morgan, and he'd be happy to walk you through. But the items you would need to bring to that conversation is, what are the requirements of the virtual desktops in terms of how many CPU cores, how much RAM, or if you don't have that information, how many operating systems are needed to run in that virtual desktop. And we can help you then figure out the specs of the virtual desktop, and then we should be able to price it for you. Yeah, I mean, our pricing is for, we sell only to academic institutions, so our pricing is very attuned to the budget limitations of academic institutions. So hopefully you'll find our pricing to be very attractive. So again, the pricing, as I mentioned earlier, is either you can come to Phil and talk about, how many CPU cores, how much RAM do you need for each and every virtual desktop. Alternatively, if you're unsure, you can come and share with us how many operating system virtual machines are going to be running in this virtual desktop. And then we can use that information to figure out how many cores, how much RAM is needed, and therefore what the cost would be. Yes, the Cyber Labs comes with all the device images. the routers, the switches, the servers, the Windows, the Linux that were mentioned in there, and others are in the GNS3 simulation environment.
Fantastic. Thank you, Anthony. We'll give it a few moments just to see if there's any more questions that pop up in the chat here. Yep, so we got another one. Can the user upload their own vulnerable VM? Yes, the answer is yes. You can load if you've created a VHD image or virtual machine image ready to use. You can upload that and bring that up in the CyberLabs environment. No problem. And then knowing how simulation environments are resource intensive, will the heavy processing be on the server side at your backend or our end client side? So everything is running in our CyberLabs environment. So from a client point of view, all you need is a browser. If you have a HTML5 compatible browser, the students can access CyberLabs and use it in the browser, no problem. Everything is in terms of the actual computation, running of the virtual machines, is all running in our cloud. Okay. I'll just give it a couple more moments just in case there's any further questions. These have been great questions so far. Okay. It looks like we may have covered everything. All right. So I think that being the case, just to wrap up, say if you would like to find out more about Apporto and then our CyberLabs, of course, you can visit us at apporto.com. Or as Anthony said, do feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to receive questions via email. Or if you'd like to have a call to understand a little bit more about our pricing model, it is very, very simple. We don't have the kind of complicated cloud pricing calculator that you might have seen with other solutions. It is very simple. And we can discuss your requirements, as Anthony explained there, and very easily come to a budgetable cost that and that will be fixed, whether it's per term or per year. So you know exactly what you would need to budget to use CyberLabs. We also offer pilots. So if you want to try this for yourselves, a typical pilot might be, say, 30 days with maybe 10 students and academics with their own virtual machines and full access to the environment. We set everything up as part of the pilots, and it's a very low cost. So again, if you want to try something, if you're thinking about solutions that you want to use in teaching for the coming academic year, we're more than happy to discuss and help you, and we can run pilots together at the right time. Okay. So I think if no more questions, all that remains to say is a very big thank you. We really appreciate you all joining us today. I appreciate your time. And we will make the recording available afterwards. So if you wanted to look back and there's anything that you missed or want to see again, you'll be able to do that. But again, please feel free to reach out. Any further questions, we're happy to help. And we'd love to have you as part of our Apporto family here in the UK. So thank you again. Have a great rest of your day. Have a good evening, and hopefully we'll be in touch soon.